Hello, students. In today's lecture, we are going to learn about dual nature of radiation and matter. NCRT section 11.1 to 11.3.2. This is disclaimer. Strategy for competitive exams. First, focus on understanding photoelectric effect and Einstein's quantum theory of light. Second, learn de Broglie wavelength and matter wave concepts for particles. Practice problems of photon energy, momentum calculations, and wave particle duality. Study work function, stopping potential, and photocell applications. Recommended books. Please visit our website forum.puta.ai for book and guidance. Learning objective. By the end of this lecture, you will able to understand the historical development of electron discovery, including key experiments by J.J. Thomson, Millikan, and early observations of the photoelectric effect. Then understand concept of electron emission from metals through different processes, thermionic field and photoelectric emission, the significance of work function and threshold frequency. Alright. So topics we are going to cover in this lecture. First, section 1.11.1 introduction. Then 11.2 electron emission. Then 11.3 photoelectric effect. After that, 11.3.1 Hertz observation. And then last, we will talk about the Reynolds observations. Now, we will understand the wave nature of light. So, let's examine how scientists first established that light is a wave. Maxwell equations, which describe how electric and magnetic fields interact, predict that light is an electromagnetic wave. Hertz experiment then confirmed this by generating and detecting electromagnetic waves in the lab. So look at figure. It shows an electromagnetic wave propagating with oscillating electric and magnetic field, which are perpendicular to each other and perpendicular to direction of propagation as well. At the same time, other experiments were revealing new aspects of matter and radiation. When scientists studied how electricity passes through gases at low pressure, they discovered X-rays and the electron. Alright. So the scientists found X-rays in 1895. J.J. Thomson discovered the electron in 1897. These findings showed that there was more to light and matter than just wave behavior, setting the stage for the idea that both can have dual natures. Now we will focusing on the discovery of cathode rays by William Crookes. Crookes used a discharge tube with very low gas pressure, about 0. 0.001 millimeters of mercury. When he applied an electric field between two electrodes, a discharge occurred. Remember, electrodes are just conductors that allow electricity to enter or leave the tube. Crookes noticed a fluorescent glow on the glass directly opposite the cathode. The cathode is the negative electrode, and this glow suggested that something was traveling from the cathode to the glass. This observation was crucial because it hinted at the existence of rays, streams of particles moving through the tube. Crookes observed that the color of the glow depended on the type of glass used. For example, soda glass produced a yellowish green glow. This tells us that the material of glass affects how it interacts with the rays, which help scientists learn more about the properties of cathode rays. Alright, let's see how Crookes' experiment lead to this important uh, breakthrough. So, he noticed a fluorescence or a glowing effect inside a glass tube when electricity was passed through it. This glow was traced back to a type of radiation coming from the cathode, which is the negative electrode in the tube. Remember, in physics, radiation just means energy traveling through space, and here it was causing the glass to glow. These mysterious radiations were given a name, cathode rays. The term cathode rays simply refers to the rays or streams of particles that seem to come out from the cathode or negative terminal in the tube. In 1870, William Crookes found these cathode rays, and by 1879, he proposed that they were actually streams of fast moving negatively charged particles. Now, we will understanding J.J. Thomson cathode ray experiment. We will see how Thomson's work lead to the discovery of the electron, which is a fundamental building block of matter. Thomson confirmed that cathode rays are made up of negatively charged particles. These particles are what we now call electrons. Thomson set up his experiment. He used both electric and magnetic fields arranged at right angles to each other across a discharge tube. This setup allowed him to measure how the cathode rays respond to these fields, which helped him determine the charge to mass ratio of the electron. So, J.J. Thomson was the first to experimentally determine two important properties of cathode rays particles, their speed and their specific charge. The specific charge means the charge to mass ratio written as E divided by M. Alright, where E is the electric charge in coulombs and M is the mass in kilograms. This ratio helps us understand how much charge a particle carries for a given amount of mass. Thomson noticed how fast these particles were moving between 0.1 and zero point 0.2 times the speed of light. Since the speed of light is 3 into 10 raised to the power 8 meter per second, that means the particles were traveling at about 30 million to 60 million meters per second. Their specific charge, E divided by m, was measured as 1.76 times 10 to the power of 11 coulombs per kilogram. This charge values shows that these particles are very light compared to their charge. So uh, here a type in the discharge tube suggesting the universal nature of these particles. How cathode ray particles were named. So scientists found that particles emitted from metals, either when exposed to ultraviolet light or when heated, had the same uh, E divided by m ratio as cathode rays. Here E stands for the charge of the particle in coulombs and m is its mass in kilograms. This ratio E by m is a unique fingerprint for particles. So even though these particles were produced in different ways, their identical E by m values suggested they were the same type of particle. These findings showed that no matter how the particles were produced, whether by light, heat, or electric discharge, they were identical in nature. This was a big clue that these particles were not just a curiosity of one experiment, but a universal component of all matter. So, in 1897, J.J. Thomson gave these particles a name electrons. He proposed that electrons are fundamental and universal building blocks of matter. To sum up, the identification and naming of the electron was a major milestone in physics, leading to the development of modern atomic theory. Now, we will understand how the oil drop experiment demonstrated that electric charge is quantized. We will see how this experiment helped measure the charge of a single electron. In 1913, the American physicist Robert Millikan performed the famous oil drop experiment. What he did was suspend tiny oil droplets between two electrically charged plates and observe their motion by adjusting the voltage. He could balance the gravitational force pulling the droplet down with the electric force pushing it up. This allowed him to measure the charge on each droplet very precisely. So he found that something remarkable. The charge on every oil drop was always a whole number multiply of a very small value, which we know the elementary charge or primary charge. This value is about 1.602 times 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. This means that the charge is quantized. It only comes in these fixed packets, never in fraction of this value. So, Millikan's experiment gave us direct evidence that the electric charge is quantized. In other words, you can't have half an electron charge or any random amount. It's always a whole number times this elementary charge. So, by knowing both the value of elementary charge E and the specific charge, which is E divided by m. Alright. So, E divided by m is the specific charge and is the elementary or we can say primary charge, where m is the mass of the electron. scientists could calculate the mass of the electron itself. Now, start by understanding what electron emission is. Electron emission refers to the ejection of an electron from the surface of a material, usually a metal. Uh, the electrons in the outermost cell of the metal atoms are only loosely attached, so they can move freely inside the metal. This free movement of electrons is what allows metals to conduct electricity so well. Look at figure here. The electrons are not fixed in the place. However, these free electrons cannot normally escape the metal surface by their own. Electron emission from the surface of a material. Now, let's see what happens if an electron tries to escape from the metal. The metal surface becomes positively charged, which means it starts to pull the electron back. This attractive force acts like a barrier, preventing electrons from leaving easily. This means that the free electrons inside the metal are actually held in place by the attractive forces from the positive ions in the metal lattice. These forces keep the electrons bound within the metal even though they can move around freely inside. So while electrons are mobile within the metal, they can't just escape their own. For an electron to actually leave the metal surface, it must gain enough energy to overcome this attractive pull. This required is called the work function, and it's different for each material. Now, let's understand the concept of the work function. The work function is the minimum energy that an electron needs to escape from the surface of a metal. Think of it as the energy barrier holding electrons inside the metal. Look at figure. So figure shows electrons at the surface, and only those with even enough energy can break free. So we use the symbol phi naught uh, here to represent the work function. Work function is measured in electron volts or EV. 1 electron volt is the amount of energy gained by an electron when it moves through a potential difference of 1 volt. For example, if a metal has a work function of 2 electron volt, each electron needs at least 2 electron volts of energy to escape. Keep in mind that the work function is not the same for all metals. It depends on the type of metal and the nature of its surface. Let's examine what's an electron volt or EV. In physics, an electron volt is a unit of energy. Specifically, it's the amount of energy an electron gains when it moves through a potential difference of 1 volt. Empathize that this is a very small amount of energy, but it's very useful when dealing with atomic and subatomic particles. So 1 electron volt is equal to 1.602 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 joule. This is the SI unit conversion. This unit, the electron volt, is used all the time in atomic and nuclear physics. Whenever we talk about the energy of electrons, photons, or even nuclear reactions, you will often see energies given in electron volt instead of joule. So, work function of some metals. Cesium here, first metal, the work function is denoted by phi naught, and 2.14 electron volt. All right, and while platinum 5.65 electron. Similarly, sodium, calcium. All right. So the starting with cesium and ending with uh, platinum. Uh, Here, uh, cesium work function is 2.14, and the highest metal is 4.70. All right. Types of electron emission. So we will see that the way energy is supplied to a metal determines how electrons are emitted. Now let's look at what makes electron emission possible. For electrons to escape from a metal, we need to supply enough energy to overcome something called the work function. The work function is the minimum energy needed for an electron to leave the surface of a metal. This energy can come in different forms, like heat or light. Remember, if the energy supplied is less than the work function, electrons will not be emitted. Depending on how we supply this energy, electron emission can be classified into three types. For example, we might use heat, light, or even electric fields to provide the necessary energy. Each method has its own name and characteristics. So let's start with the first type, thermionic emission. In thermionic emission, we heat the metal to a high temperature, giving electrons enough energy to escape from the surface. So look at figure, how heating the metal causes electrons to be emitted. This process is used in devices like vacuum tubes and old television sets. Notice that as the temperature increases, more electrons gain enough energy to overcome the work function and leave the metal. So, uh, the second is field emission. This occurs when we apply a very strong electric field to a metal, typically around 10 raised to the 8 volt per meter. This intense electric field pulls electrons out of a metal surface. A real world example is spark plug in an engine, where a strong electric field uh, causes electrons to jump across a gap, creating a spark. So look at figure here. It helps us visualize how an electric field can actually extract electrons from the metal. Now, let's talk about the third and most important type of electron emission, and the photoelectric emission. Now, here question arises: what is photoelectric emission? So, look at figure. How light of a suitable frequency shines on the metal surface, causing electrons to be emitted. This process only happens if the light has enough energy, which depends on its frequency. Emphasize that this is a key experiment that lead to development of quantum physics, showing that light can behave like particles called photons. These electrons that are released due to the action of light are called photoelectrons. And it's important to remember this term as it highlights the connection between light, photo, and electron emission. All right, Hertz observation. The phenomena called photoelectric emission was discovered in 1887 by Heinrich Hertz. Photoelectric emission means that electrons are emitted from a material when light shines on it. So let's look at what it actually show. During his experiments with electromagnetic waves, he noticed that high voltage sparks across a detector loop became stronger when he shined ultraviolet light from an arc lamp onto the emitter. Hertz realized that shining light on the metal surface made it easier for free charge particles to escape. Alright, so these particles are electrons. This observation was important. It showed that the light can directly cause electrons to be emitted from metal, which classical physics could not. So, let's see what happens when light falls on the metal surface. Some electrons near the surface absorb energy from the incoming light. If they get enough energy, they can overcome the attractive force from the positive ions in the metal. Once these electrons have gained enough energy, they actually escape from the metal surface into the surrounding space. These freed electrons are called photoelectrons. This process is the basis of the photoelectric, and it shows us that light can transfer energy in small packets or quanta to individual electrons. Now we are focusing on Holwas and Lenard's observations, which are important for understanding the photoelectric. So let's start with work of William and Lenard between 1886 and 1902. They studied photoelectric emission in detail. Photoelectric emission is when electrons are ejected from a material after it absorbs. This was a new and surprising discovery at the time, and it challenged the classical wave theory of light. Lenard in 1902 made a key observation. He found that when ultraviolet or UV radiation was directed onto the emitter plate inside a vacuum tube with two electrodes, a current started to flow in the circuit. Look at figure. Here, the ultraviolet light hits the plate, and suddenly electricity flows. So, as soon the ultraviolet radiation was stopped, the current flow also stopped. So, thus, when ultraviolet radiation falls on the emitter plate C, electrons are ejected from it, which are attracted towards the positive collector plate A, constituting a current in the external circuit. Now, uh, in 1888, scientists noticed that when he shined ultraviolet light on a neutral zinc plate, the plate became positively charged. Here, look at figure. In the figure, how the setup looked. This tells us the ultraviolet light is somehow causing the zinc plate to lose negative charge. So here, Holwatch found that if the zinc plate was already positively charged, shining ultraviolet light made it even more positive. But if the plate was negatively charged, it lost its negative charge when illuminated. This means that the light is removing negative particles from the plate, and the effects depending on the plate's initial. Putting these observations together, scientists realized that the negatively charged particles being emitted must be electrons. So, UV light is causing electrons to be ejected from the zinc plate. This was one of the first clear pieces of evidence that light can interact with matter by knocking out electrons, which is the basis of the photoelectric. Now, After the electron was discovered in 1897, scientists realized that when light shines on a metal plate, it can actually cause electrons to be realized from that plate. This process is called photoemission and empathize that the incident light provides energy to the electrons in the metal, allowing them to escape from this circuit. Since electrons have a negative charge, they are influenced by electric fields. In the experimental setup, the electric field pushes these electrons towards the collector plate, allowing us to detect and measure the current produced by the emitted electron. When ultraviolet light fell on the emitter plate, no electrons were emitted at all when the frequency of incident light was smaller than a certain minimum value called threshold frequency. So this minimum frequency depends on the nature of the material and material of the emitter. So it was found that certain metals like zinc, cadmium, magnesium, etc., responded only to ultraviolet light, having short wavelength to cause electron emission from the surface. This tells us that not all the light can cause electron emission, only light with enough energy can do it. So, however, some alkali metals such as lithium, sodium, potassium, cesium, and the rubidium were sensitive even to visible light. These metals are special because they can emit electrons even when exposed to visible light, which has a longer wavelength and less energy than ultraviolet. This shows that some materials are more sensitive to light and can respond to lower energy photons. All these materials that emit electrons when illuminated are called photosensitive substances. That means they react to light by releasing electrons. This property is important for devices like photoelectric sensors and solar cells, which rely on materials that can respond to light in this way. These electrons were termed as photoelectrons, and the overall phenomena is known as the photoelectric. This effect was a major discovery because it showed that light can behave like a stream of particles, not just waves. So let's now recap what we have studied so for this lecture. So Maxwell equations for electromagnetism and Hertz experiments provided light's wave nature. J. Thomson identified cathode rays as streams of negative particles with consistent E/M ratio across different materials. Milken's oil drop experiment measured elementary charge and established charge quantization. Work function phi naught is the minimum energy needed for an electron to escape a metal surface measured in electron volts. So 1 electron volt is equal to 1.602 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 joule. Electron emission can occur through three methods: thermionic emission, field emission, or photoelectric. Hertz discovered photoelectric effect in 1887 during electromagnetic wave experiment. And Holwach's 1888 demonstrated that UV light causes metals to emit electrons, making neutral negative plates positive. Lenard 1902 showed that UV radiation creates current flow in evacuated tubes by causing electron emission. Practice question. So now at the end of we have some practice questions from this lecture. Solving these questions will behave for solving these questions. You can build your skill problem solving skill and concepts. So first is what was the value of elementary charge determined by Millikan's oil drop experiment in 1930? Who first discovered the phenomena of photoelectric emission in 1887 while experimenting with electromagnetic waves? What is the energy gained by an electron when accelerated through a potential difference of 1 volt. What are the three main methods by which electrons can be emitted from a metal? All right. So these are the practice questions, and these are homeworks. These are homework. Thank you for your attention. I hope this lesson was helpful. Thank you.